Welcome, everyone. We're going to get started here in just a moment. As you are joining, if you would please introduce yourself in the chat by dropping your name, your organization, and if you are joining us from an exotic place, a city, please identify that as well. We'd love to get to know you and know where you are joining us from. So welcome. Welcome, everyone. We are going to go ahead and get started. So it is my pleasure to welcome you to our webinar in partnership with the National Association of Asian American Professionals. Today, you will hear from Junann Lopez, who will tell us more about their organization, and then a panel discussion followed by the opportunity for you to ask questions. If a question comes to mind throughout the conversation, please feel comfortable in dropping that question in the chat. And again, in an effort to get to know one another, please welcome and drop your name, your organization, and the city where you are joining us from into the chat. So again, welcome. So let's get started. I'm Wendy Doyle, President and CEO of United We, and our organization is dedicated to research and nonpartisan advocacy to advance all women economically and civically. We've been working on this for the past 10 years, just advocating for issues, really reducing economic barriers for women and their families. And to date, we have conducted 30 evidence-based research studies. We've enacted 23 laws, initiated 9 executive orders, and 25 administrative actions. In civic leadership, we're making change for women through our Appointments Project. And through the program, we empower women to serve on civic boards and commissions at the city, county, and state level, where they have the power to make decisions that affect our day-to-day lives. Our Appointments Project serves as a resource for all women, civic leaders, and a resource to elected officials as well. Grounded in research, our Appointments Project was established to destroy the outdated assumption that women are not qualified, available, or interested in civic service. We equip women to navigate the appointment process at all levels of government, city, county, and state, as mentioned, and we believe civic engagement really creates the rich diversity of the communities they serve by having strong representation of how the reflection of how communities look and feel. Through our Appointments Project, we have had success of having more than 200 women get appointed to date and serving on multiple boards and commissions. So we're so proud of the progress. As our national influence grows, we're positioning our model for change in the Midwest and beyond throughout the United States. Today, we want you to hear from 3 accomplished women who are civically engaged and to learn more about their journey. What you will discover is there is not one path to follow. This is an opportunity for you to chart your own path that makes sense to you. So with that, I'm going to introduce Junann Lopez first to tell us more about the National Association of Asian American Professionals organization before we jump into our discussion. So with that, Junann, take it away.
I just briefly want to thank everyone for their time, and so thankful that you're attending to get more information around your civic journey. The National Association of Asian American Professionals is a 42-year-old nonprofit founded around the AAPI violence that happened in Detroit, Michigan. We come together to build community with 3 pillars. 1, professional development. The second one is networking and making connections. And the third is volunteering in the community, which I think aligns very well with what United We is accomplishing with the women in our community. Women in NAP is a program that we have. And so this collaboration is very important to us. Again, I thank you for joining us and taking time, possibly your lunch hour. And I hope that you gain some information that will help you activate your civic journey and appreciate those that are serving our community in that way. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Junie, and a special thank you to Shivani Banderi, who has been a longtime supporter of United We, who really helped bring this partnership together. So thank you, Shivani, and thank you again to Junie. So let's get started with this civic journey. And today's conversation, as mentioned, will be moderated by Joni Wickham. Joni is co-founder of Wickham James Strategies and Solutions. Joni has tremendous civic engagement experience, and I will turn it to her to tell you a little bit more about her journey in partnership with United We, and then introduce our esteemed panel today. So Joni, take it away.
Thank you, Wendy, and hi, everybody. Joni Wickham, co-founder of Wickham James Strategies and Solutions. I have been running my public affairs consulting firm for about 4.5 years now, and I started that with former Kansas City Mayor Sly James in 2019 after we had served 2 4-year terms at City Hall in Kansas City, Missouri, which is a great segue into introducing our panelists. And I am going to start with the mayor of Wichita. Mayor Lily Wu was elected the mayor of Wichita on November 7th, 2023, and sworn in as the city's 103rd mayor just on January 8th, 2024. Mayor, I'm sure that seems like just yesterday for you. She is the first woman elected to a full term and the first Asian American mayor of the largest city in Kansas. Fun fact, she speaks Cantonese and Spanish and was born in Guatemala and immigrated to Wichita, Kansas with her family in 1993. On the 30th anniversary of coming to America, she announced her candidacy for mayor. She champions an inclusive vision for the entire city, focused on ensuring public safety, strengthening our economy, restoring trust in City Hall, and building a united community. She graduated from the International Baccalaureate program at Wichita East High School and was a Gore Scholar at Wichita State University. And then while serving as a Rotary Ambassadorial Scholar, she earned a master's degree in journalism from the University of Hong Kong. Thank you for joining us, Mayor. I also want to introduce Anna Thomas. Anna grew up in a family of immigrants from Malaysia and India. She was shaped by her family's Christian faith, devotion to serving others, and the importance of contributing to the Lehigh Valley community. And that is what led Anna to serve on the school board of the Bethlehem Area School District. She received her degree in chemistry from Wellesley College, fantastic all-women's college, where she was on the NCAA championship rowing team. She went on to earn a master's in public administration from the University of Pennsylvania. And she's works at the as the Pennsylvania State Director of the Asian American Women's Political Initiative. She is also, this is exciting, she's also running for the Philadelphia House of Representatives in District 137. I think we're going to hear a little bit more about that later in our conversation. I'm also honored to introduce Sayuri Yamada. She is the president of Kazuna Strategies, and she brings businesses and organizations together to make meaningful progress. She spent 17 years in the energy business, rising to become the executive director of government and public affairs for the Public Service Company of New Mexico. In her role, Sayuri championed PNM's paradigm shift into clean energy. She was responsible for government affairs, corporate social responsibility, the company's foundation, and much more. As a New Mexican, she spent a lifetime developing important long-term relationships and coalitions, deeply seated in her state and across the entire Western region. Interestingly, for this conversation, she serves in an appointed board position to New Mexico Governor's Small Business Investment Corporation and holds a BA from Baylor University. Welcome all, and thank you so much for joining this conversation today. The first question that I have for you all is to tell us a little bit more about yourself and the boards and commissions that you've served on. Mayor, I'd love to start with you.
Thank you, Joni, and thank you again for the opportunity to not only share, but also be amongst a panel of distinguished guests as well. My experiences are unique to my own experience. And again, I hope that just encourages and inspires others to follow their own path. For me, my path to public service really has been a path of community service since I was in my teenage years here in Wichita. I have served on multiple boards, specifically cultural appreciation boards, whether it's for the arts or just in our community, specifically the Wichita Asian Association. Those are things that just spoke to who I am. And so I started volunteering again when I was a student at Wichita East High through the International Baccalaureate program, which really instilled this value of serving our community. And so as I continued progressing in my educational path, I continued volunteering for organizations that, again, spoke to my value system of inclusion. And as I finished my collegiate studies, I continued with serving the Wichita Asian Association. And eventually, at one point, I was one of the advisors for the NAP in Wichita chapter. And it was because of one of my mentees through the Wichita Asian Association, Amy Vong, that I got connected to NAP. So I believe that it's important to find the things that you're passionate about and then invest the time, not only to the organization, but specifically to people. And now I have this new role where I am serving more individuals in our community, and I'm really grateful.
Thank you for that, Anna. And then Suri, I'm going to kick it over to you after that.
Well, I also want to echo that thank you to the National Association of Asian American Professionals and for all of you for organizing this panel. I wish that I had something like this when I ran the first time in 2022. It really is so special to be in spaces where you can have solidarity with folks, and appreciate each one of you. I think similarly to Mayor Wu, for me, it was actually the thing that brought me into public service was the fact that when I was in my public school education in Pennsylvania, I was a K through 12 public school student. And when I was a sophomore in high school, my favorite teacher, who was my 9th grade English teacher, was the product of widespread budget cuts in Pennsylvania, led to my favorite teacher being furloughed. So our governor at the time, Governor Corbett, cut over $1 billion from education, and as a direct result of that, my favorite teacher was let go. And so that was the experience that actually cemented my appreciation and interest in local and state government. And it's what got me going to every single school board meeting. I figured out that there was a position on my local school board in which students could serve in a representative capacity. So I became the student rep for my school board from that experience of advocacy, and then served as a school board rep for the rest of my time in high school. And really, if it weren't for that experience, I think that I wouldn't have ever considered or thought about a future or a career in public service, because I wouldn't have known that something like that would be available to me. And I think that now, after having run for state rep locally, and done that kind of work building capacity in my community, I have become I'm a planning commissioner locally on my hometown's planning commission, and I get to see another dimension of that, which is this really special and crucial role, really, of being a person that is respected and who's able to field questions and concerns that people in my community have about local planning issues, which are, similarly to school board, the actual issues that really acutely impact folks' lives. So I'm sure we'll share more as the panel continues, but I'm very grateful for my time and my service on those boards.
That's great perspective. Thank you. Suri?
Okay. Thank you, Joni. And like my other panelists, I'm truly honored to be here with these distinguished and accomplished women, especially in public office, and Anna soon to be in public office. Thank you, Wendy, and your team, as well as NAAP, because the work that you do is truly important to really encourage people to serve on boards and commissions and in public office. So I have a little different background. I didn't really grow up in a household where family or relatives were involved in civic engagement or politics. My parents were immigrants from Japan. My father came to this country to go to school, and my mother, several months later, joined him And so they didn't have any family here in the US, and they were living in Fort Collins, Colorado. And I don't know if you know, but Fort Collins back then in the 60s was definitely a small rural community. And that's where I was born. I grew up in Los Alamos, New Mexico. I used to have to explain where Los Alamos is, but thank goodness to the movie Oppenheimer, I think most people know where Los Alamos is now. But after I graduated from college, I decided to return back to New Mexico and start my career working with my father's software startup company, which he created from his 10-year work at Los Alamos National Laboratory here in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And during that time, I became very much interested in how do we create more high-wage, high-tech jobs in northern New Mexico, because I felt very, I felt like I had this, great opportunity to be able to come back and have a good paying jobs where a lot of my other colleagues and classmates were not able to. And because of that, I really wanted to make some changes at the state level. And one way of making changes through the state legislature. So I spent a lot of time at the legislature testifying on behalf of small businesses and how do we support small businesses in New Mexico, which then eventually led me to serve on the Business Public Policy Committee and eventually serve on the board of the New Mexico Chamber of Commerce. Afterwards, I was encouraged to take the Vice President of Governmental Affairs position for the New Mexico Chamber of Commerce to advocate for now all businesses. It was a tough decision because I had to leave my family business after working with my father for 15 years. But then shortly after representing all business, I was asked to join the largest investor-owned utility company in New Mexico, where eventually I became the executive director and ran all of government and public affairs for the company. So I definitely had the privilege of being able to work with our elected officials at the federal, state, and local level. And although I've never really had the desire to run for office, I have tremendous respect for those who really do. It's a tough, tough job. But after 17 years being in the corporate world, I decided to pursue my dream and start my own consulting company, which is what I did. So I serve on a regional hospital board, and I'm also the treasurer of the New Mexico chapter of the International Women's Forum. And what I'm most proud of, I became the first chair of a newly created Health Conversion Foundation, which will be one of the largest regional health conversion foundation in the Southwest area, where we're really trying to tackle some of the social determinant issues like homelessness, substance abuse, aging. But as Joni mentioned, I was recently appointed by our Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham in New Mexico, to serve on her board for the Small Business Investment Corporation. And I feel like I've come to full circle now, because this board makes capital investments in New Mexico small business to help them really grow and expand their business. And this year, thank goodness to our energy industry and the reserves, we will be able to have about $31 million to help support small businesses. And I look forward to talk a little bit more about that opportunity to serve on an appointed board position. Thank you, Jenny.
That's a tremendous impact. Thanks for sharing that. To your point, let's dig a little bit deeper, and we'd love to hear from each of you about what made you decide to get engaged or apply for a board or run for office. And Mayor, I'll start with you again.
Well, I never expected to run for office. And then when I started just researching, I knew that there were organizations like United We around. But by the time that I had to make a decision, it was too late. So the mayor's position, as well as the city council in the city of Wichita, is a nonpartisan race. And that is truly what really called me into that specific role, because I have been a Wichitan for 30 years, and I'm a product of this community, from being a product of Wichita Public Schools to being a product of just the investments in education by Wichitans. And so I have served for 12 years as a local reporter and had a very unique perspective before running for office, and that was really listening to our community. I say that that role of being a reporter and an anchor is being a professional listener. And I believe that public servants need to be better listeners. And so it really dove well with an eventual calling to run for office. And what really made me want to put my name out there was seeing all the division we have been experiencing throughout the nation, throughout the state, and then in our city. And if we want change, it has to start somewhere. And the level of civility that needs to come back into public service motivated me to put my name out there. I know that it's not representative of my community, and the people that I know have helped me grow into the person I am today. And so I believe that there was a moment in my in time that was appropriate for me to run, and it was last year. So exactly last year, right about this time, is when I really started considering it. And I really got into it rather quickly because there was a conflict or perceived conflict, because I am a television newscaster, and I had to leave my full-time position in order to even consider running for office. And I think that that's a reality that people don't often think about. When you have a career and you want to run for office, what is the balance between your current career and then your public service role? And for me, I left my dream job back in March of last year, and had about a month to really consider, am I really doing this? And on April 2nd of 2023, on the 30th anniversary of coming to America, I announced my candidacy. So again, the motivating factors were the dissatisfaction I saw, the division that I saw, and that this role was supposed to be nonpartisan. And when you run a nonpartisan race, it is much more difficult because you don't have the political backing of established organizations. And I think that that's also something folks that consider running for office don't fully appreciate, when they do have a political background or an organization that's backing them. They don't have to start from the bottom up. But for someone who is a first-time candidate, a complete stranger to public service in that capacity, and then a nonpartisan, it really was an uphill battle. And I'm just really grateful that I'm now on the other side. And I hope that this inspires others to see that there's an opportunity to not be as politicized as we have become, and that we can be civil and have good candidates come to public service. And that's what I hope this inspires others to do.
Yeah, that's a good point about civility. Anna, how about you? And Suri, I'm going to go back to you after Anna speaks.
Mayor Wu, I'm so appreciative of your story, and I think it actually really intersects with so many of the pain points I experienced when I ran for office in 2022, and also now, and also different, because in Pennsylvania, to be a state rep is a partisan position, and I wish it were less so. But the grass is always greener. But I ran for office in 2022, and I was 26 when I ran the first time, and I was the only woman under the age of 30 running for a state level office in all of Pennsylvania, which is the 5th largest state in the country. So there are a lot of people here, lots of races. There's 203 districts in which you can run for state rep. And I was running in my hometown and was finishing my master's in public administration. Never in a million years. I mean, I told you all about my origin story of running, of becoming the student rep for my school board and being appointed to that position. But and I always knew that I had a real love of place, and I've always been such a hometown girl, and never in a million years would I have thought that I would be running for office at the age of 26. You know, my parents, I think, were always people who really inspired a love of community and told me and taught me that the best thing, the highest calling I could achieve in life would be to be in service of other people. And also, I think that, you know, I did not particularly receive the same encouragement that that maybe some of my peers would have received from their parents to enter public service, right? I have friends whose direct relative, you know, their dad was the mayor or their mom was a judge, and you know, those kinds of connections are very powerful, especially when you're running for office in a state like Pennsylvania, which is a very it's a very hard state to break into if you don't have those insider political connections. And I think that for me, when I was thinking about my run for office, it was me doing a lot of kind of work and validation of myself for myself, because other people weren't going to do that for me, right? And also, I'm someone who, like, I really believe in the value and the power of hard work. And I think that, you know, the thing that kept me going and that really inspired me as I kept running and as I was growing the campaign last year was the fact that I was canvassing, and I was talking to all my neighbors. Over the course of the campaign last year, I was finishing my master's in Philly and I moved back to my district. So over the course of 5 months, I visited 8,000 doors over the course of that campaign. And it was the most life-altering experience you could have, because I was talking to Republicans, I was talking to Democrats, I was talking to independents, I was talking to veterans, I was talking to parents of kids with special needs, I was talking to every single kind of person you can imagine. I was talking to seniors who live on a fixed income. And so, you know, their primary issue was, why were their property taxes so high? And it was my job to do exactly what Mayor Wu was describing, to listen and to sincerely express that, you know, my representation of them as members of my community would be from a place of earnest desire for public service and to serve them. So I hope that, you know, now as I'm running in 2024, and I lost that race by 700 votes. So I lost by a very, very narrow amount. It was 2% of the vote. And I think that now as I'm running in 2024, it's just the same momentum as last time. It's like, you know, the people I spoke to last cycle are the people that make me still decide to run again this year in 2024, because I know that there's still that work to be done, and it's so important.
Yep, the work is never finished, right? So Yuri, we'd love to have your perspective on this. What made you decide to get engaged?
Yeah, so, you know, being on the appointed board, mine was a little different. It was definitely about, I wanted to be more strategic, and I started to think more strategically about boards that I wanted to serve on. You know, as I mentioned, you know, after leaving the corporate board and now starting my own business, I wanted to do more things than just work 24/7. And through my job before, I served on numerous various different types of boards. So I thought, you know, primarily 3 reasons of kind of going into this new phase is, one is really about limited time for civic engagement, because there's so many other things that I'd also like to accomplish during this chapter of my life. Second is, I definitely wanted to make some meaningful and sustainable impact. So I had to really do a lot of self-reflection to kind of see, you know, what are my skills? Where do I feel like I can make the biggest impact in my community? And, you know, how do I bring that all together? In the past, I've always been asked to serve on boards. And this time is the first time I've actually proactively, you know, reached out to make an effort and asked to be served on an appointed board. And this is a very unfamiliar and and kind of almost an uncomfortable place for me to make that request, because I was pretty much brought up that if you do a really good job, people will recognize that, and then you'll ask to be served versus going out and letting people know what you have to offer. So, you know, that's kind of those areas that I felt like, okay, this time I'm gonna make a proactive move on really mapping out my where I want to be. And the third one was developing the skills that I don't have to be a valuable candidate on a corporate board. So I'm also at that phase where I am very much interested in hopefully serving on a corporate board because of my background and experience. And I think I have a lot to offer. But so this led me to actively pursue this appointed board position at the state government level. And this would not have happened if it wasn't for my mentor who said, you know, you really should look at an appointed position. I wish I had known this earlier in my career because it's not that difficult. So I really would love to encourage everybody who may not want to run for public office or not quite ready to run for public office, because being appointed is also an option of being engaged and also being part of that conversation. So just a couple of tips, like this is the book for the state of New Mexico of lists all the boards and commission in every state. If you go to their website, they have a list of all the boards and commissions, and you can see what's available. And they're always looking for smart, brilliant, amazing people to serve on these boards and commissions. So do a little research and look and see what might match what your skill set is. And then you can also apply for those positions online. But another way is to look at your network. Take a really good look at your network, because I like to say in New Mexico, it's 3 degrees separation. It's not, you know, who you know directly, but who you know who knows somebody, right? So if you really take a look at your Rolodex, you can kind of say, oh, I know so-and-so who might know this person who works at the governor's office or who's on the board of this, and let them know that you are interested in serving on a board. I didn't get my first pick of what I want, you know, the board I wanted to serve on. But what it did is it allowed me to get my name out there and my interest, and then people became aware that, oh, Sayuri's interest on serving on a board, you know, what might be some of the boards that we have open that she would be a nice fit for. So I definitely encourage everyone to at least give it a try. Look on the website just to see all the different boards and commission. And then second, look at your network and take a look at it. And because it's all about how do you connect those dots.
Good point. Our next question, we touched on this a little bit, so I'm hoping that you can, each of you can give us just an answer that's maybe less than a minute long, so that we can get to the last 2 questions and then the audience Q&A. What are some of the outcomes of your work in public service that you're most proud of? Just a real quick answer if you can. Mayor?
Well, I'll start off with something that's very fresh and very new. Just less than 24 hours ago, we had our very first town hall on homelessness in Wichita. This was something that, again, is part of who I am. I like bringing people together. And I believe that when you have more people at the table, you can find the better solutions. And I want a diverse thought of individuals coming to the table, giving us that feedback. So our very first town hall was last night, and it was so successful that we had standing room only. The expectation was about 40 people, and one of the estimates was 200 people showed up. So again, for me, my passion is bringing people together, finding solutions. And one of the ways I believe is when you gather people together.
Thank you. Anna?
I have 2 that I'd be happy to share. Is currently in my service on the Planning Commission, there are multiple projects that are presented to us. And what I'm really interested in is honestly helping solve housing insecurity locally in my part of the state, which is one of the fastest, if not the fastest growing part of Pennsylvania. And so I am really interested in making sure that we approve projects and are looking at projects that are considering, first of all, pedestrian dignity, the dignity of folks to be able to ride their bikes and walk. So every time I'm on the Planning Commission, I'm constantly asking questions about, well, all right, how this proposed development is right next to the park and ride that commutes people from Bethlehem to New York City. So if it's 500 feet down the street, can we and should we and let's put in a sidewalk and also a bike line for people to get from here to there on this otherwise very busy road. So those kinds of advocacy, and then obviously the work that I've done in electoral politics and organizing locally. So the capacity building that my campaign has enabled has increased turnout in my part of the state, and especially now in a presidential election year. I'm so proud to be running where I'm running, because I am the most competitive state house race inside of the most competitive congressional race. My congressperson is Susan Wild. So, and then on top of that, Pennsylvania is a swing state. So the way that my county goes is typically the way that the state ends up going is the way that the country ends up going. So really proud to be doing things, I think, that have those kinds of small local effects, but also those ripple effects.
Thank you. Sayuri?
Mine is just mostly, I think it's like being in those positions, it gives us an opportunity to nominate. Like, there's nobody that looks like me on my boards most of the time, and it really gives me that opportunity then to nominate and to suggest names of other women. I'm a very strong supporter of women. I truly believe that we need to have more women on boards and commissions, but it puts me in a position to be able to provide recommendations for other women and other people who don't necessarily have similar perspectives to serve on these types of boards and commissions.
You are reading my mind, and our next question. We would love to hear how your lived experience as an Asian American woman informs your perspective as a leader, and particularly how you show up in public leadership spaces. Mayor, can I start with you?
Sure. So something about my personal story is that I'm also an immigrant, a first generation American, and not only that, a first generation high school graduate, first time college student, and then eventually graduate of a college. So I bring a lot of different lived experiences, and among them is being an Asian American. And more specifically, my ethnic background is Chinese. And so I bring a lot of different labels to the table. And I always say that they don't define me, they're just part of my story. And I want people to know that as we have different lived experiences, when you show up in spaces where people may not look like you, but they might not also be the majority either, I feel like I connect with a lot of minority groups in my shared experiences as an immigrant, as an American with prior to like a hyphen. I feel like I can show up in these spaces and give my perspective, but also encourage others to share their stories as well. I think it's about being vulnerable enough to be okay with sharing your lived life and talk more openly instead of being scripted. Just talk from the heart and share whenever there are spaces, those challenges, so people do know that it's not all what may appear to be a perfect situation. There's a lot more to the story than just, I guess, a social media post. Yeah. And people need to realize that, especially because we are Asian American women at the table, there's a microscope on us, and we have to, I feel, as a sense of pressure to show up well, representing all the different communities that I do represent. And so I want to project and help encourage our community to have this positive outlook. But whenever I'm in spaces like this, I feel like I can tell you some of those challenges. Mm-hmm. And I think it's good to talk about those challenges because it's not easy, or else everyone would be running for office, or everyone would be signing up to be on boards. It is work, and it's the hard work that gets us to better positions in our communities. And I appreciate truly all those who step forward and say, you know what, I can also help and share my story and then help our community too.
Yeah, it is truly important to have these safe spaces where we can all be vulnerable. Anna, how about you?
I think exactly echoing everything Mayor Wu just shared. You know, the way in which I think being a minority in my district, and you know, also someone who was born and raised in my district, is, but the added layer of kind of the what I bring to the table, given my ethnic background, is a sincere fight and fire for the underdog. And I say that really from this place of it becomes so intersectional so quickly, the way that you are able to kind of bring in your own experiences of being othered or excluded, and allow that, the way in which it allows you to bring genuine empathy and compassion to other people is something that I don't think you can really emulate if you haven't personally endured yourself. You know, I will say that for me, when I'm elected to state government in Pennsylvania, I'll be the first brown Asian woman elected to any part of elected state government in Pennsylvania, which is huge. You know, and it's terrible. The fact that, you know, it's 2024 and that we've never had someone who, you know, there's no one in state government. I loved the way that Sayuri phrased this a couple last question a beat ago of her answer to the last question. But this thought of there's no one, you're not going to confuse me with anybody serving in state government in Pennsylvania. You just won't, and that's fine, because it is what it is. And I think it means that you need to be a champion for your people, and you need to also be aware that you're no second-class citizen just because you're different. If at all, I think that, you know, it's really something that allows you to become more empowered in that role.
Good point. Sayuri?
Well, I've never lived in a community with a large percentage of Asian Americans. For example, in New Mexico, the Asian American population is less than 2%, like 1.6 or 7 or so. And I also grew up with very traditional parents. I don't know, Anna or Mayor Wu, it's like, I couldn't do sleepovers. I couldn't go to prom. I couldn't dating. I remember like I had to wear a dress to school. I had to beg my parents to buy me a pair of jeans. I couldn't imagine how you go to school with a pair of jeans and all that. So I'm very consciously aware that the people that I interact with, it may be their first experience interacting with an Asian American. So I really want to make sure that's a very positive experience. And trust me, you know, living in this political world for over 20 years, there are some times you just want to lose your, excuse my language, shit, you know, but you just don't have that luxury because, like Anna said, they're going to remember who you are and who that person was. My mother always told me that nobody remembers what you say, but they remember how you made them feel. So it's very important to me that that first impression, in whether working with, interacting with an Asian American, is positive. And something that my father taught me is, you know, you can be tough or hard on issues, but soft on people. And diversity and inclusion, like Mayor Wu mentioned, is really important. You know, I grew up, you know, embracing diversity and practicing inclusion. So as a leader, when I look at problems and solve problems, I look at it from a larger lens versus just solving that one single issue. So when I look at problems like Mayor, well, it's like about the community. How does this truly impact the community? Not just addressing one, you know, specific issue, because those, even if you fix that one issue, it does have a ripple effect that may have a negative impact in other parts of the community. And it's, you know, about community sustainability, you know, what are the solutions we can come up with that has long-term positive impact onto our community. And in the corporate world, I like to say it's like we often talk about shareholders in the corporate world. So rather than viewing it from the shareholders' perspective, I like to view things from the stakeholders' perspective. In this small business investment corporation that I serve on, I am the only Asian American person on the board, and the only appointed woman of color that's also on this board. So I am very mindful of every interaction, what I do. And because I just remember as a kid, my parents telling me, make sure you behave, because if you misbehave, everyone's going to know that's the Yamada kid and it's going to come back and everyone's going to know. So you always have to behave well what you're doing. Sure enough, my parents always knew everything I did before I came home. So
that's really interesting. And it, you know, I can certainly see where that would create a huge burden, which means that having a supportive network is even more important. And so to move into our last question for me, and then we're going to open it up to our audience members, I would love for you all to talk about the value and importance of a support network, and also why it's important to support other women in their own journey. Mayor?
Sure. So I have always said that this community helped raise me, and it is not dishonest. It's very truthful. When I came to the United States, we were a new immigrant family in a neighborhood that often gets neglected in the city of Wichita. This is Southwest Wichita. But I remember walking around our neighborhood, and there was another family that saw us and decided to take us in and say, "Hey, would you like to come to church with us?" And we need to get back to understanding that our support systems are closest to us. It can be family that you're born into. It can be chosen family that friends are also part of. But we also have to lean on our neighborhoods. And with the rise of just, virtual interactions and the lack of in-person interaction etiquette that we have forgotten, and really understand the value of relationship building is seeing someone eye to eye, and seeing that when you say words, whether it's on social media or via email, it goes to a person. And when you see the reaction of a person, I don't think that you would probably say hurtful things as you do, as some do on social media. And so I lean on my support system that includes not just my family, but my friends. I have lots of mentors. I have a supportive boyfriend. And I think what I guess, especially for women who are considering running for office, not just looking at your network as people you've had just, acquaintance interactions with, but they are also part of your greater support system. And I believe that. And that's how I got elected. It's because I have been part of this community, interwoven into the story of Wichita, and Wichita is part of me. And I don't let my difference of being Asian or Chinese American or an immigrant say that that's my defining factor. Instead, I say I'm a Wichitan first. And I think that that is why it resonates with people, that your support system is greater than just familial ties. And so I would encourage people to say, who are also other people that I can lean on. And I think if we lean more on understanding that our neighbors are also part of that support system, we would be in so much better communities. So I always encourage people whenever I can to say, hey, I challenge you, meet your neighbor to your left and to your right, and actually know them by first name. Because back then you would borrow a cup of sugar. Now I think that we've lost that art of, hey, I'm your neighbor. I'd love to get to know you. If there's anything you need, just, this is my phone number. I'm going out of town. Please take if something looks suspicious, call it in for me. We need to get back to that. We need to get back to strong neighborhoods, strong communities, and strong neighborhood families.
Anna, do you have a closing comment?
I think I would not much more to add, aside from the fact that it serves you so well. I think when you think about a support network and how you can develop that for yourself, to just really earnestly have an abundance mindset around it. And every single interaction you have is an opportunity to demonstrate respect and mutual understanding with the person you're talking to. So, and that can, the most unexpected places can be places where you receive such energy and wonderful support for yourself in your campaign on all kinds of levels, professional, emotional, social, right? So that would be my comment to that.
And so Yuri, you get the last comment before we open it up to our audience.
Okay. Well, this is one of my superpowers. I'm really good at picking people and building my network, my support system, and I call them my circle of trust. These people are part of my inner circle, and I build my support network with 5 types of women. One is your best friend that you can always count on, that you can laugh with, cry with, doesn't care, how you're dressed that day. They're always there for you. The second one is your work friend, someone that understands the internal politics, understands the challenges and opportunities in your work world. You can go out after work, get a cocktail and download. Third is a coach. I think we should all have a coach. And fourth is a mentor. There is a difference between mentor and coach. Mentor is someone who shares their knowledge and skills and experiences and helps you develop and grow, versus a coach is more often short term. That's real specific, that works on improving your skills like communication, setting goals, to help you reach your full potential. And the fifth one is a mentee. It's really important to give back. So I encourage everyone to at least have a mentee and to extend that hand and open up locked doors for them.
That is so important. Thank you for sharing that perspective. Okay, we have had an amazing discussion, but we'd also like to hear from you all. So if there are questions, please put them in the chat. Any audience questions? Well, I have one because I could talk to 3 of you all day long. Is there anything that you would have done differently, or anything that you wish you would have known at the start of your leadership journey? Now that you've had some time to reflect, Mayor, how about you?
Wow, what would I do differently?
Or what is something you that you know now that you wish you had known at the beginning?
Well, I'll start off with I didn't realize just how difficult it is to reach voters. As a reporter, we give you information, and a lot of folks get information through social media or through TV, not as much through newspaper here in our community. So I knew that people would be engaged in kind of having a connection with me as someone that they have trusted over the years. So I initially thought that I could do a completely positive campaign that just focused on uplifting Wichita, basically a marketing campaign for Wichita, not realizing just how difficult it is to reach voters and getting voter turnout. And so I had to raise a lot more money because, again, I was new to the political arena. And I think people don't realize just how difficult it is to turn out one voter, but then turn out new voters is so much more difficult. And so it requires fundraising. And that's something that I would not have really thought much of prior to even considering running. But now that I have run for office, I can tell you that I thought we could double voter turnout, and that's just not realistic, even with all the effort of being in a positive campaign and staying really focused. It still was very difficult to get voter turnout.
I want to pivot for a second because we have a great question from Julia in the chat. She says, my question is about finding your passion and getting started in your civic leadership journey. There are so many important social causes and issues. How did you pick where to focus early in your career? That's a really great question because there are so many issues out there and there's so much that needs to be done. Anna, can you give us your perspective on that? I think education, you've mentioned a few times, is really a passion point for you.
Definitely. And I think that is the key. It's there's a book that I've never read, so maybe, grain of salt with what I'm about to say, but there's this concept called finding your why, right? So it's like identifying what the authentic connection point is to whatever work you're doing. For me, I think that education was something that I was born into to always be caring about. You know, it was the value that my parents most impressed upon me. It was the thing that was the ultimate you know, way you could spend your time was by studying. And my dad would sit with me on Saturday mornings and we would do math problems together, and that was how we hung out on Saturday morning. But I think that when I thought about how other people in my community, other children in my community experience math and experience education, you know, it's widely ranging depending on what your access and opportunity is. I fundamentally disagree with a child's education varying depending on what zip code they're born into. And that is something that I have always just independently been motivated by and driven by to solve. So to me, that's why public education is what it is for me. It's because I have a personal connection to it and I have an external drive that keeps me going with it. But it could be anything for you. I think that's the beauty of it. You should find what you care most about and then dedicate your attention there.
So Yuri, we'd love your perspective. Yeah, go ahead.
And I'd love to chime in on that, on what Anna has said. I think passion is really, I mean, because it's like, well, what's your passion? And I think that takes a lot of self-reflection and time to yourself to really think about what's important. So you really need to dedicate that time to figure out what your passion is. But I often think a passion is what makes you cry and what makes you so furious that you think something needs to change, or you're so sad that it makes you cry, that there's something that you should fix. And we all have, you know, there are different things that trigger us, but that's one way of looking at it. And another way of just like, what do you want to do to be engaged? Sometimes if you don't really know what your passion is at that time, is what are your strengths? What are you good at? What do you currently do? If you're an engineer, then see if there's some organization that's supports kids in STEM, you know, STEM related organizations. So just look at what your skill set is, identifying 2 or 3 of them, and then go from there to find what civic groups that you should be involved in. And it's also easier to get into because you have that experience, because it's a two-way thing. You got to bring something back to give something to the organization, as well as you learn something from your civic engagement.
Great. Wendy, I know we are at time, so I'm going to turn this back over to you to close us out however you see fit. And this has just been a tremendous opportunity to be able to spend time and share space with you all.
Thank you, Joni, and thank you to everyone joining us today. A special thanks to the National Association of Asian American Professionals, June Ann and Shivani. There's good questions that keep coming in through the chat, and we're sorry we've run out of time. We have recorded this session and we'll be sharing it to all that registered. And if you want to go back and listen, such great information by our leaders. A special thanks to Mayor Wu, to Anna, to Sayuri for really being authentic, you know, pulling the curtain back, being really real, and sharing your real thoughts, your inner thoughts. That's really, really helpful. I think a call to action here to everyone joining is, again, there is no single path. There's no right path for civic engagement, but what's right for you. And certainly United We has the Appointments Project as one step. And if you have an interest in learning more, visit our website at unitedwe.org to learn more about the Appointments Project. So with that, we're going to sign off. Thank you again to our panelists and to Joni Wickham for moderating such a great discussion. Have a great afternoon, and we'll be in touch.